welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping in and watching our videos. We greatly appreciate it. This video is gonna be the promised second video for the crochet hooks. We have decided to use a new tool to help with these. Actually, there's a couple of them, but I only use one in this particular video. Also, I do have a couple other tips and tricks that may help you when you're making these, and hopefully I've answered some of the questions that you guys had in our last video. The one thing I will not do in this video is show you how to fill the molds up. I will link our other video to this one where I show you how to fill each of the molds. Also, in this video, we are going to be doing a giveaway. Yay! We hit 100 subscribers, and I know that sounds like a small goal, but for us, it really is a big goal, something that we've accomplished and worked hard on providing some videos for you guys and have accomplished that subscriber goal. As promised, we are going to be doing a glitter giveaway, and we're going to be giving these glitters away. These glitters are from Backcountry Glitter, which is our glitter site. We will have a link for that site posted down below. If you do not win these glitters, you can go and purchase them if you like them. So we have Dampson Delight, Bird of Paradise, Mean Green, Neon Lights, and Dorothy. And those are some glitters that I thought had a fun summery vibe, and I thought you guys might be able to do something with those. So to whoever wins, which we will announce in our next video that I'm hoping to post on Friday or Saturday, we will announce that winner. So congratulations to whoever wins. And all you have to do to enter into the giveaway is like this video, leave a comment down below, and also subscribe to our channel. So it's not very hard to enter that giveaway. Once everyone has entered and we get ready to post our next video, we will randomly select the winner out of all of those who have correctly entered to win. So good luck to you guys, and hopefully you will like the new glitters that you get. Now let's go ahead and get started on these crochet hooks. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Alright, so like I mentioned in the intro, I did not video filling these molds up again. I will tag above and in the description box my previous video just in case you haven't seen that one yet. This is the second video with just a couple extra tips and tricks on getting these capable of actually using as a crochet tool. Right now we're just demolding these, and you'll see that each time I take one out of the mold, I kind of try to bend it back and forth to make sure that it has cured properly and isn't bendy. If you add too much glitter to your epoxy when you put these in the molds, it either will take longer for them to cure, or they may not cure properly at all, and you'll have to scrap them and start over. So I always just give them a little tug in either direction just to make sure that they're gonna be solid and sturdy. I do use this piece of wood to put the molds on while they're curing and set them up onto a sturdy shelf out of the way where they won't get bumped and tip over while they're curing in the molds while they're hardening up. Just as a means of mobility so that I can do them down on my table, and then whenever I get them filled up, I can take the whole board and move it over to a shelf without trying to pick up each individual mold. Now we're going to take some white acrylic paint, and I'm just going to use a little piece of paper. You can use whatever you prefer to add your paint to. whether it's a paper plate or a different piece of paper, or if you have a reusable plastic tray to put paint in, whatever works for you. And I just have a small round tipped paintbrush here, and all I'm doing is dabbing that white paint into the numbers and letters on each of these crochet hooks. This is going to allow the numbers and letters to stand out so that you can visibly see which crochet hook it is that you're working with or that you may need for a specific project. I did compare these to some other crochet hooks that I have on hand. I have some metal ones. They don't have a name on them. They were passed down to me from my grandmother. And I just use those. They have letters instead of numbers, so I kind of just tried to compare them to those. And I believe it was the 5 or the 5.5 millimeter was comparable to the H hook that I have on hand. So hopefully that actually matches up. I need to do some research just to make sure, but it worked perfectly for the crochet project that I was working on. The specific yarn that I was using worked perfect with that 5.5 millimeter hook. Here is what it will look like once you get the excess paint off, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Just take a wooden popsicle stick, and once that paint has dried, you should be able to just scrape over it. You can also use like a wet baby wipe or a wet paper towel. Just keep in mind that if you use something that is wet, you do run the risk of removing some of the paint from inside those letters and numbers because it is an acrylic paint. I'm going to speed this up here so that you're not having to watch it in actual time. But I'm just going to scrape off that excess paint. It comes off extremely easy. Doesn't take any force whatsoever to rub that off. The only issue that you may run into with this is if there were any air bubbles around those numbers in the mold. When you demold it, the air bubble would have popped and left you with like a small hole in your resin. When you put the acrylic paint on, if you have any holes, the paint will get in those and you'll be able to see them. You can take a weeding pick or a straight needle and you can get the acrylic paint out of those holes if you have any. I think I had one or two, but it wasn't noticeable enough to really worry about it, so I didn't really mess with it. But if you do have any larger air bubbles, then you can use that straight pin method or weeding pick to pick the paint out of that. You also don't have to use white. You can use whatever color that you want to fill in these letters and numbers, whatever works with the color of crochet hook that you're doing. Now the next step that I'm going to show you, these are so pretty. I need to make myself a set. So I'm going to move this out of the way and we're going to go over to the next step. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. This is one of the new tools that I picked up. It's called a deburring tool, and it's mostly used in like metal craft, I believe, but we're going to use it for resin. You could also use your Dremel. If I'm only doing one set, I'll use my deburring tool just because I don't want to pull out the Dremel and switch out attachments and all that that's necessary to get the Dremel to work for this particular need. So the deburring tool works well if I'm just doing one set. if I'm doing more, if like I've done 2 or 3 sets and I'm doing all of this at one time, then I would get my Dremel out and attach one of the smaller sandpaper pieces to it, and I would just take the excess off the back here. One of the keys in not having a lot of excess on the back is to make sure you don't overfill your molds. I can't stress that enough. Do not overfill these molds, because when you do, you get these big chunks, square chunks of resin along the back, and if you have those, you probably will need the Dremel tool to sand those down so that you can have a smooth back. But for these, being I just have this one set and not all of them needed it, I'm just going to use this little deburring tool and just go along the sides where it sticks up a little bit, and you just scrape it real easy. It takes the resin off extremely easy. Make sure you cut away from yourself. Even though it doesn't look dangerous, that is a blade and it will cut your finger. Ask me how, I know. And just be really careful. Don't do like that and cut toward yourself. Cut away from yourself. I'm always catching myself cutting toward myself, and I'll stop. And then you'll see me switch and cut away from myself, because I do not want to cut my finger. But that works really, really easy. This will also work if you have other molds and you have the little raised lip around the edge where it was, whenever you fill a mold, your resin kind of glides up the side of the mold, and it leaves a little raised edge all the way around where the resin touches the side of the mold. And this will just take the smallest little amount off, and it's just perfect for molds. I'm so glad that I found this and was able to share it with you. A friend of mine actually shared it with me, and I purchased it, and I was like, that is amazing, I'm getting one. So this part, you can do 2 ways. Again, if you're doing a small amount and you have a good UV resin, not all UV resins are up to par. If you have a good UV resin, you can just add a bead along the back side of the crochet hook, and then I'm using a silicone makeup brush. I think it's an eyeshadow brush, and just run it along that bead to dome the back side of this crochet hook. It doesn't take very much UV resin or much maneuvering of the resin. You just want to cover any dull spots and just kind of dome it so that it's more rounded than flat, and then you'll put it under the UV light. The other option you have, if you're working with several pieces, which I also like doing, is to put regular epoxy resin along that. And when I do that, I just dip that eyeshadow brush into a mixed cup of epoxy. I just dip it in there and then just run the bead along the back there, and then set them back on that board and leave them overnight again. I didn't have any issues with them setting up upside down. They kind of prop up on that hook. But if you have any issues, you could always get like a piece of clay or some of the like wall putty that teachers use. They have it at Walmart in the office section. You could get some of that wall putty and stick it down on your board or your flat surface and stick the hook part into it to hold them sturdy while you fill in that little strip down the back of the crochet hook. So you let that cure, and then I flipped them over and I added just a tiny bead of resin over the numbers and letters, and then just kind of smoothed that out. I didn't redo the entire hook. I just did just over the numbers and letters. There's a little indent there where your fingers, when you hold your crochet hook, your hand kind of rests there naturally. And so because there's a little indent there, you can smooth out some UV resin or even epoxy resin in that spot, and it's not noticeable enough to where you would want to re-epoxy the entire hook. So I just did that one little section. And of course I'm going to stick it under my UV light here to cure it. Again, with this part, if I had done several sets at once, I would just use epoxy resin and stick them back up on the shelf for another day and let it cure that way. So you can't really see that that resin is there and not another whole layer on the whole hook. So I just do the tiniest little bead and smooth it out. You do want to make sure that that paint is completely dry before you do this step. You don't want the paint mixing in with the resin and causing it to get a coloration effect. I'm just going to do these other ones. There wasn't really a whole lot of new things that I've learned with these. Just covering up these letters, adding that little bead down the back so that it's a little more smooth than it was before. You could also take a small sanding block and sand down that back as well. A couple of people have asked me if I've had any trouble removing the hooks from the molds, like if I've had to use mold release. I have not used mold release. I have not had any issues getting these out of the molds. You absolutely could use mold release. I also have not used heat to pop air bubbles. I haven't really had any issues with air bubbles, so I haven't had to use any heat. I'm also a little weary about using heat with molds. I would suggest, though, that if you are going to use a torch or heat gun with a mold, that you use mold release first on your molds, because the mold release acts as a barrier to protect your mold. Now, if you use these silicone brushes, just stick them under your light if you use the UV resin and cure them, and then just pop those excess pieces off and your brushes are good to go again. And if you use regular epoxy resin, just lay them on the board or on a silicone mat overnight, and the next day you can pop all those excesses off and you have good to go brushes again. Now, just to show you that you can crochet with these hooks, I just grabbed one of the balls of yarn that I have in my drawer, and I believe, the 10mm hook, which is the largest one that comes in these molds. And don't come at me for my crochet technique. It's been quite a while since I've crocheted, and in the beginning you'll see me holding it kind of funky. Right before I get done doing this little sample, 2-row sample piece, I actually start holding the yarn better. But it's been a while since I've crocheted, so don't come at me for technique, please. We're just going to chain a few here just to make sure it glides up and down on the crochet hook. It did really, really well. Didn't have any issues with it getting caught up or hung. The yarn was gliding really well over the hook. The hook was very comfortable to hold, just like my other plastic or metal hooks that we have. I will say that after using a couple of them, that the smaller ones are, just kind of like the small ones in the metal or the plastic. They're not the sturdiest hooks. You can absolutely still use them because the yarn is obviously going to be smaller and more delicate as well. Just be mindful that you need to be careful when you're using the 3mm hook. That one is really, really tiny, and if you were to get it caught in the yarn or something of that nature, it would break fairly easy, I believe. Here I go to hold the yarn a little bit better of a technique here. But I just wanted to do a couple of rows, chained a row, and then doing some double crochets down that chain, and just to test out this yarn and crochet hook to make sure it's something that would be usable. And I definitely think these could be made and sold and used for yarn projects. I would definitely put care cards with these, making sure that your customer knows to be careful not to leave them out in the heat, and you know, just in general be careful using them. But the yarn looks good. The little 2-row project looks really good, so I think you guys will really enjoy these. Please let me know below if you do have any questions. Please check out this next video selected just for you.